Hey, Anthony Vutano here, the internet's busiest CSGO nerd, and today I'm going to be talking about entering a bomb site and choosing the right lane or line to find consistent success. And really, this is one that makes some sense if you think about it, which is just that you want to stay consistent in your attack on a bomb site. However, it does get a little bit more complicated when you get into specific situations. However, the most basic way to put it is if you're attacking long A here and you're trying to push your way up, you're probably going to want to be choosing either the inside lane or the outside lane. And really, these are pretty clearly opposites in terms of pros and cons. The one on the left side here is going to put you in a straight line, which makes you a little bit easier to kill if your opponents peek out on you, makes it a bit harder to dodge flashes, and if you can imagine this long cross wasn't really here because it's not there on every map, you wouldn't really want to be swinging out here trying to peek these angles because you're very close to the close wall, making these very disadvantageous engagements. However, what you don't want to be doing is going up close and then changing over out here. Very often, this is going to add some danger to your route, it's going to add time, and it's going to confuse your teammates because it looks like you're about to do one thing, and then you go ahead and do the other. So that's the entry line there, and the support line is on this other side. We'll call it that. However, when you're playing pugs and matchmaking, oftentimes this is your entry line in that you're working picks, and so you're trying to play as optimally as possible against angles that you can peek into. And this line on this left side here, hugging the wall, is one where you need some support this time around. Of course, that is not always the case, but very often you need support from some sort of flash or nade or Molotov to get you around the corner and on top of your opponents. Another great example would be right back here taking long A. So these are kind of two separate lines that you can split up in your mind. The idea is that you want to go into the area itself having chosen the line that you want because you don't want to get into the middle of the open here, go, what the hell am I doing? And then change position entirely. Again, it's going to confuse your teammates, it's going to confuse you, and really, to optimize your gameplay, you should never be doing that anyways. You should know if you want to go aggressive or passive as you enter an area. So, an area you can do this is long A here, where there's 4 real lines. The 3 main ones that you're probably going to see most often if you watch pro games start with the defensive one. So this is going to be the support one, where you're maximizing the distance between you and the closest wall where your enemies may peek out. So they're going to be peeking out with less of an advantage, and you can have a greater ability to actually kill them. You're trying to narrow this angle here, so if you get blinded or you get naded or something happens, you can easily back up into cover, and you may be actually swinging all the way wide and holding this angle here, where what you've now done is you've completely isolated yourself from this corner angle so as to focus on the pit player that may peek out on you. Now, the more aggressive of the lines, or the entry line, would be one that you've probably only seen really if you've been watching pro play, because these entry lines are obvious when you play professional levels. However, in matchmaking and pugs, not that many people want to do this, where they run right out, get close, and stick near the smoke and maybe flash push through it, because this line is incredibly dangerous and it's a huge risk to take. But this is why you see pugs where everyone is baiting, because nobody wants to play the entry line. They want to play the support line. They want to play the defensive line. And I swear, if you name this the support line, nobody would take it anymore in pugs, because they don't want to be a support player. They want to be getting the entries. But in reality, it's the safe one. It's the one that's going to get you more ability to find kills. And if you get flash, you have safety near you. Now, I said there are 4 lines. Well, the third one would be the second entry line that you really only see if you're playing with teams, because you sometimes may have seen and been confused by a player that runs out long, oftentimes on a set execute, but sometimes on a fast play as well, with that smoke on the corner, and they're kind of looking down. They're looking down, and then they come around and they look up, usually a little bit earlier than I did there, but they're looking down early, dodging all the flashes, and then they look up and they clear out pit. The idea for this one, and this is why I say it's very obvious when you're playing with teams, is you have teammates tossing deep flashes behind this player. So that's going to be blinding the player in pit, but because this guy is taking a well-defined route into the bomb site, looking down and then looking up only with their back turned, he's not going to get blind by his teammates' flashes, and he has a chance to get some frags. So this makes it very obvious why you would want to have defined routes when you're on a team. However, in pugs, again, it's very important for similar ideas. It's just less obvious. Now, the final line I'll talk about is one that you may not see all that many people play to the same extent that I'll describe it, but it does fully describe the idea if I push it to the extreme. So again, if you have a smoke down on the angle here, you can imagine a line where the player comes out to this corner here and starts backing up along this wall. Now, what they're doing is, again, angle isolation. You have this player on blue bin, and you can assume for this scenario that he's posted up on pit. He is completely safe from the corner, and he is covering pit. So what does this player coming out here do? Well, they make themselves completely safe from pit, or at least as safe as possible, so that they can focus on the corner, and they try and back up to, again, maximize the distance from this wall where their enemies may be trying to peek out like this, and now you've got a huge advantage over top of them. In this case, oftentimes this one transitions into kind of jumping and clearing out pit. That's what you may occasionally see players do with this type of line. However, the idea is you isolate off one angle to attack another while trying to make sure that you're in a position to get something done. And this is kind of the idea of entry lines or entry lanes that you want to be trying to utilize to give yourself as much success as possible. Of course, you can get in situations where you need to trade between different lines, and as long as there's a reason, absolutely go for it. Most of the time, you're probably going to be correct. The problem is simply that I see a lot of people that don't think about this beforehand, and so they kind of run out into these awkward situations and get themselves killed. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. Patreon, 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 Patreon. Vous CSGO.